This is something that I've been harping on. Esteemed audience knows that I have an axe to grind. I want to decentralize publishing. I want more agents and editors out of New York. One, so more people can participate where the cost of living is a little bit lower,
Hmm.
and that'll increase diversity. And really, that's my main point. I want more people involved, and I want it to be a less select class. But I also understand a lot of that has to be in person. You have to know the editors you're submitting to. You have to develop those relationships. So how are you managing to do that without living within the city?
Well, I think it helps that I spent the first 15 years in the city. And so I got to know, people before I moved to Florida. And I still, well, before COVID, was going back to New York City and doing in-person meetings several times a year. But now with Zoom, it's a lot easier. We can just do Zoom meetings. And so even, I'm keeping up my relationships by Zoom, or I'm making new relationships with Zoom. Anytime I don't know an editor or want to, get to know an editor or renew, or just talk about talk with an author, talk about an author, with one of the editors that I work with, we're just getting on Zoom. It's a lot easier. And I'm doing, obviously, well, some people are going to the international book fairs these days, but a lot of us are not because of COVID or travel restrictions. And so we're doing virtual book fair appointments. I've done a whole bunch of virtual London book fair appointments recently. And then in the fall, I'll be doing a lot of virtual Frankfurt book fair appointments because we're not comfortable going to the international book fairs yet. We're doing a lot of our meetings virtually these days. Some people are using Google, Google Teams. Amazon has their own Amazon Chime. We're using a lot of Zoom. So, we're doing just so many of our meetings virtually these days that it's not necessarily, it's not necessary for us to be in New York or travel to New York all the time like it used to be. But, I spent 15 years there back when it was more necessary to be central, especially when I started 29 years ago. It was back in the days where you had to Xerox manuscripts. We were not emailing them back and forth. We were Xeroxing manuscripts and sending them by messenger to the publishing houses. So if I wanted to do submissions to 10 houses, I was making 10 copies of a manuscript and we were sending them by messenger. And I had a permanent divot in my shoulder from carrying manuscripts back and forth on the subway. And back in the day, good old days.
Yeah, everything's a little bit more analog. You've got to be there in person. That makes sense.
Yeah. I actually remember way back when Eleanor was worried about us getting email because she was worried that it would take away from our office time, that we'd get so distracted by the internet and by email that we wouldn't do all our work, rather than it really helping us save time and everything. Where, now, of course, all the world's on internet, but, she didn't know back then that this is the way the whole world was going to be. And of course, back then, remember, we had dial-up, and oh my goodness, remember the days of dial-up.
Well, it saves time. It gives with one hand, it takes away with the other. Because yes, you save time because you email, but you also spend how much time doom scrolling on Twitter or checking YouTube videos or whatever.
Right.
Unless you found my YouTube channel, esteemed audience, that's never time wasted. But anyway,
right, exactly. Nothing about books is ever time wasted.
Goodness, no, this is educational. This is improving your writing, even as you're watching or listening to us.